we had none other than the former NSA, Mr. M.K. Narayanan, say this, the fact that the Americans knew about the entire 2611 plot, but they didn't give us enough intel because Headley was an agent of the Western intelligence agencies. But Dr. Singh, this MHA says that something like 6 of the 12 Khalistani terrorists have been residing in Canada. Now the fact that you've designated 2 of them as terrorists, how does that, what plays out now? I mean, does India now formally request for their extradition? Explain to us what the next steps in this case are going to be.
Sandeep, there are 3 options. Option number 1, red corner notice, and within the 2 nations, there should be extradition treaty. If there is one, I think things are very simple. If there is none, then via the Interpol, the red corner notice, and also the freezing of their movable and immovable assets in India, and also clamping down the illegal and illegitimate activity of their gang members in India. It is like saying that you also wipe out their empire of crime in India also, because that will decimate them. Because to have 700 shooters in the country also is a sad reflection on the internal security scenario. Daud survived because his henchmen and his shooters survived in Maharashtra. His property couldn't be auctioned, but we had no such problem elsewhere. We would have made toilets out of their houses, but rest assured, if the auction does not happen in 60 days, then the signal is very clear. The government is not serious in auctioning the assets of Daud Ibrahim and such gangsters. There has to be zero tolerance, and there has to be a no-nonsense approach. If not, then you have to see where is the fault line. And the fault line is very obvious. Some states seem to be turning their backs on the depredations and the activities of these gangs. That is why they have been able to survive till now.
Right. In fact, Aditya, when Dr. Singh mentioned these points, I was thinking about that last documentary that you did on the bombing of Kanishka. Tell us what complicity, well, you can't call it complicity, but the fact that they were negligent in pursuing these terrorists while they were plotting to bomb these 2 airliners, and which they did, killing 320 passengers in 1985.
Well, Kanishka is a known history. It's an open secret, Sandeep. And there are 2 major points. One is that Kanishka could have been stopped.
Right.
The Canadian intelligence had all the intelligence. In fact, they had tape recordings of the Khalistanis conspiring to bomb Kanishka.
And they even followed the bombers as they were
They followed the bombers, they had
explosives.
recordings, they had personal witnesses actually seeing bombs being made, training of terrorists actually happening, everything on record. And yet there was no action whatsoever by the Canadian intelligence, by the RCMP or the Canadian politicians. And the second aspect is that it took decades, and the cases are still ongoing. It took decades really to deliver some amount of justice, and yet all the accused were protected by the Canadian intelligence, the police, and the biggest of all, the Canadian politicians. So the hypocrisy is out there and open. How much will they give a long rope to these Khalistanis? Because today they are targeting India. Today they are targeting Indians. Tomorrow it's their own backyard. The Canadians will be the target. It will be just like Pakistan, snakes in their backyard being nurtured, and it will bomb their own backyards one day.
Absolutely. And Deepak, do you feel that there is actually going to be a line that needs to be crossed before Canada realizes, my God, how did we allow these snakes in our backyard?
I'm wondering what that line is, because if you look at so famously, I think British Columbia came out with a notice, I think last year, and that stated that 9 out of the 12 most wanted men in the state or the province were actually Punjabi gangsters. If you look at the rising gun violence, even in Canada, a country where guns are not easily accessible, the rising number of cases, the brawls that have happened. There was even a famous case wherein gunshots were heard in a university campus. That's virtually unheard of when you think of foreign university. So I'm honestly wondering, where is that red line that the Canadians are willing to think about? And even so, should that line be crossed? I honestly don't think they're up to the task. I think it's already too late.
You remember that when you mentioned this thing of gun violence, I was reminded of that documentary about 20 years back where this Michael Moore says that there's so much of gun violence in the United States, and I decided to cross over to Canada and see how things are. And he says, no one owns a gun there. It's such a peaceful country. And my God, what a change we've seen in 20 years' time. And Dr. Singh, We were talking about the line that needs to be crossed for Canada to realize that, my God, what have we done? We are growing, we are rearing snakes in our backyard. What to your mind would be that line for the terrorists, the Khalistanis, the insurgents in Canada to cross, for them to realize that they've been nurturing all these terrorists and insurgents in their backyard?
Sandeepji, just one line. Faithful implementation of the rule of law. The bombing of Kanishka is punishable within the Canadian law also, and those who were complicit, privy to the fact that Kanishka is about to be bombed, they should be dealt with as co-conspirators of the horrific crime, and they should be dealt with as per law. But the fact that they have chosen to side with Lucifer and to be on the side of those perpetrating the Kanishka bombing, well, it is for them to decide whether they choose to take action against their own police force, and which they should rightfully, because it is punishable in their own law also. Unless there is faithful implementation of the rule of law, both in Canada and the USA, without any double standards, one set of rules for India, the other set of rules for Canada and USA, and plausible and credible allegations. We cannot go by credible allegations, we go only by hard evidence. And the hard evidence as of now not only points fingers, but glaringly says that the law enforcement agency of Canada was complicit in the bombing of Kanishka, and there should be consequences for all those.
News 9 Plus. Download now.